All right, so hi guys. Right, everyone, first and foremost, welcome to the first week of Hilary Term of Oxford, and welcome to the very first session of the Oxford FinTech and Legaltech Society. Right, my name is Tian, the VP of the Society, and today we are joined with Zijian, who is the co-founder and co-CEO of Intellex. Right, and today's session will be themed Student to Founder, the Legaltech Journey. Right, okay, so I think as Zijian previously mentioned, this session is going to be really casual. It's really about talking about his journey and some of what your interests are and why everyone has sort of an interest to pursue legal tech, right? So it's going to be interactive, right? So feel free to join the session, feel free to chat with us, and feel free to pop any questions you have into the chat, and then we will take them on as we engage in the conversation. Right, so in terms of the timeline of the event, it's going to be a 1-hour event, starting off with an introduction of the society and a conversational presentation by Zijian, as well as his journey in legal tech. And last but not least, more free-flowing Q&A and dialogue. Right, so first and foremost, just a very quick introduction to the society. We are the Oxford FinTech and Legal Tech Society, founded in 2017 with about 2,000 plus members, and we do seminars and workshops like this one. We also publish our proprietary research, and we conduct networking and recruitment events. Right, so as many of you might know, this is the first event in our Legal Tech Bootcamp series, which is basically an end-to-end series catered to everyone from all backgrounds and different levels of experience to really get to know and have a high-level crash course on what legal tech is, ending on with a no-code hackathon competition in week 6. Right, so moving on to our event today, just a very quick introduction. Zijian is the co-founder and co-CEO at Intellex, which is a legal tech productivity suite and knowledge management platform startup. Right, so Zijian graduated with a law degree from the Singapore Management University. Then after that, he actually went on to practice law at a Big 4 firm, and then he was admitted to the Singapore bar. Right, eventually after his wide variety of experiences, he is now co-holding Intellex with the ambition to index the law and to build useful applications powered by proprietary algorithms. Right, and the startup has recently raised USD 2.1 million in 2020 and has recently completed its proof of concept with Clifford Chance. Right, so honestly, a very interesting background, and we hope that Zijian, you can speak to us more about your journey. Right, so let's welcome Zijian.
Thanks, Tian. Thanks, friends. Like I shared just now, I really hope the session can be a free-flowing, informal one, because I think most of the sharing will only be valuable when it comes to questions. So instead of the very typical things that you expect a speaker to say, I think it would be better if I take questions. You can type it out in the chat. Then we can maybe unmute yourself and ask the question when the moderator calls you out. I thought that would be more valuable. But maybe as a starting point, what exactly is Intellex and why is it important for lawyers? I hope to begin by stressing that I think the idea of legal tech actually has to stem from providing value to the industry. And depending who you define as the industry, the use case has to be sharpened. So typically, Intellex legal tech serves law firms, but a legal tech company can also serve government regulatory bodies, can also serve in-house legal departments. So it is important to know what is the value that we are providing to the customer. So why is it important for lawyers to use Intellex? Typically, we begin this way. We say lawyering is actually a professional service, and the revenue generation model is by providing a particular legal expertise in a particular area as advice. And typically, this advice comes from knowledge within a firm or by the lawyer. Therefore, if the access to knowledge can be scalable and retrievable quickly, that actually reduces the cost of providing a service. And that will subsequently improve the competitiveness of the team or for the firm. Imagine if you are a firm or you're a barrister, you have done a particular research before. The next time something similar comes up, you're unable to reuse or work on top of what you already have. that will be as good as reinventing the wheel. That in itself represents an institutional loss of value and assets, knowledge assets to the particular firm. So it is with this angle that we say, okay, Intellex is a knowledge management platform. And what we are trying to do here is to structure the law in a manner that users can retrieve primary law and secondary materials easily. So we are a knowledge management platform. We help you categorize, we help you navigate your knowledge, and subsequently help you retrieve it. So it is important for lawyers because you want to go home earlier. You don't want to spend time reinventing the wheel. Somebody has done it before. What we want to provide you is a quick way to do so by organizing your knowledge. So that is in short what Intellex does.
All right, great. Yeah, sounds really interesting, Zujin. I think a question that most of the people in this room have is actually how your journey started off, right? I think a lot of our audience today are actually law students, right? A lot of law students who definitely have an interest in legal tech, but perhaps might not have a background in computer science, or might be even interacting with like legal tech for the very first time, right? So for you personally, having been through the entire process of going to law school and then joining a firm as a lawyer, how did this whole thing start for you?
To be very honest, when I had the idea of Intellex about 10 years ago, and even when we started the company in 2015, the term legal tech wasn't even formed yet. So I did not develop an interest in legal tech when I was a student. It was only during law practice that the idea of trying to develop something to help myself emerged. So it happened really this way. I was in office till 2 a.m. On a particular weekday. It was a very stressful month. Somehow or other, I think I was too stressed. I went into this place called a war room. The war room is where lawyers will put their documents. So there are many boxes inside the room. And I went to the war room and I basically was so stressed, I pushed the boxes onto the floor. That was quite cathartic. So about maybe 10 minutes, I sat down on my computer and I was asking myself, why am I still here at 2:30 a.m. researching on this point? Somebody in the firm must have done it before. And how can I get access to it? Then naturally, I went on to Google and I asked myself, why is it that whatever we have experienced in the consumer internet world is so vastly different from what we experience in the professional setting? If I'm able to know a lot of answers just by Googling, why can't I do the same for legal knowledge? Because it is very likely somebody had asked this question before, either out there in the World Wide Web or in the firm. That's what the common law is about anyway. Somebody has answered something, there is a position, and we find out the position. So somebody must have found out. Then the question is, why is it so tedious to find out that position? So that germinated the idea of, okay, maybe the step towards solving this problem is to structure the law. Because currently it's in a way that the computer doesn't understand. It's judges write differently, lawyers write differently. It's all in prose form. If there's a way we can structure this content, just like the way things are structured in a library, then it will be easily accessible. So that sparked off the idea when I was in practice. So I was fortunate after I left practice, I went to join the National Research Foundation in the Singapore Prime Minister's Office, where I was in charge of venture capital investments and innovation policy. I had a chance to interact very closely with researchers, with scientists, and I found out about some research work done in what they call information retrieval. And I thought, this is the thing that we needed in the legal industry. Information retrieval techniques to be applied onto the legal domain so that things can be easily retrievable and accessible. So I developed an interest in that, and before I came out full-time in 2015, I was actually working on it as a side project at night and over the weekend with my co-founders to try to explore, okay, how can we actualize this idea that the law is actually a web of connections, and if the web of connections are structured well, it can actually be a map to help everybody navigate towards that eventual destination of finding an answer. So that's our starting point. And of course, in 2015, we said, okay, time waits for no man. We need to get started. So we plunging.
Well, that's really interesting. Can you just explore a bit more on the tech side of things actually? How does it actually work? So for example, in Google, let's say I want to ask a question. I type in into Google, and sometimes the answer pops out, as a response. Sometimes it doesn't. I have to like scroll through many links to find out what exactly I want. Right. So how does intellects play a similar role in the legal industry, in the legal services?
So to be candid about it, you are looking at Google in 2020. I don't know how old you guys are. I remember the time where I was using Alta Vista. I was also using Ask Jeeves, and I was also using Yahoo in the late 90s before Google came out. So we need to think about Google in 1999, Google in 2000. So back then, search on the internet, or rather retrieval on the internet, was about a directory. Google was trying to establish a directory for everything. So it wasn't really a search, it was a browse capability. And if you think about it, that's very similar to what you see in the established databases now as well. So, but what Google did was they had a hypothesis. They think that, okay, if there are more people linking to a particular website, the higher the number of links made to a particular website, the higher likelihood that the website is legitimate, and therefore it should rank higher. That was their hypothesis. I think something similar exists in the corpus of legal knowledge, whereby there are already established links and connections. So what Intellect is trying to do here is to develop our hypothesis. This is our hypothesis, a map and a web of connections. And we try to codify that. And we use that to drive retrieval and search, or discovery. Discovery, I don't mean the e-discovery sense, but discovery of knowledge. Because specifically, lawyers have two mental modes when it comes to research on knowledge management. First, they know what they want. So they go search for it, or they browse for it. So they know, I'm looking for something in the Defamation Act. So I'll go to the Defamation Act website, I'll look at the headers, I'll go into the specific provision. Next thing, I'll look for cases that cited this particular provision. Then I go to Westlaw or Lexis to search for it. So they know what they want. But the thing is, in law practice, there are situations whereby you do not know what you want. Then people want to discover. So it's like going to Google Maps. When you want to search for a particular location, they'll be able to tell you, okay, in the surrounding area, there's also Shake Shack, there's also McDonald's, there's also KFC. We know you're looking for lunch, but you have these options. And to be able to discover something serendipitously is actually a mental model most lawyers have. And I think you guys may have experienced this when you guys are doing research papers. You have a hypothesis, you embark on a particular research and realize, okay, something similar happened in Hong Kong. There's a case cited in Australia, but you didn't know it exists. You discovered it. So it's not as though you can search for the particular Hong Kong and Australia case because you don't know it exists. So this is something that is attainable with a map. And that's what we're trying to do here.
Right. Okay. That sounds really interesting. And honestly, yeah, I can assure you, like half my legal essays come from Google. So, don't tell my professors that, but that is basically, what a lot of law students face today. Right. Let's take a step back towards like the start of your entrepreneurship journey. Right. So, from law practice to founding a startup is a very, it's a very intimidating step for a lot of people to take. Right. And I think for a lot of people, once you enter law practice, it's a very, stable career. You work hard, but you are compensated well. Right. So for you personally, why do you take the step into entrepreneurship? Right. How do you get the confidence or the inspiration to do that?
I think the honest answer is since I was a kid, I hoped to be in entrepreneurship. But what I didn't expect is to become an entrepreneur in the technology field. Yeah, and of course, I was also looking at the legal industry generally. Um, don't just like you tell me not to tell a professor, don't tell my ex-boss. When I was looking at my ex-boss, who was about 10 years older than me, he was putting in a lot of work with me as well. And I asked myself, will life get better without technology? And then it occurred to me, okay, if the technology doesn't exist now, can I go about creating it to bring value to people just like myself? And I thought that's worth a try. So, and yes, and we did it. We left our full-time, our day jobs to embark on this journey 5 years ago.
Oh, okay. And it's been what, 10 years since?
Sorry, say that again?
And how many years has it been since you guys started?
5 years.
5 years. Okay,
yeah,
so
okay,
well, so it's been quite an exciting journey so far. Right. Okay, let's painful journey. Okay, let's focus on that, right? So that conveniently leads us in our next question, which is some of the highlights and challenges during your journey, right? And I think perhaps we can start off from the tech angle. So a lot of people on this call are actually law students, right? And myself included. And when we think about entrepreneurship, or rather legal tech in general, the first question we ask is, I don't know computer science. I might have done like a course on Udemy on Python, but I don't know the coding or the syntax behind legal tech, right? And I think that's the first barrier to entry a lot of people face, right? So for you as a law student, how do you find this a problem in your startup journey? Was this an issue that you encountered? How do you overcome it?
Absolutely. I think the technology challenge was a major one, and it's still a major one for a deep tech AI legal tech startup like ours. In the earlier days, it was much tougher because, so maybe I'll start off with sharing a problem that all entrepreneurs will have, regardless of whether it's technopreneurship, legal tech, or whatever. It's the problem of the chicken and egg. When you first started off, you have no reputation, you have no money, you have no track record. So why should people join you? And it is not as though legal tech is super sexy. Engineers are generally more interested in the hottest thing of the day, fintech, crypto, something they can relate to, e-commerce, delivery, logistics aggregation. For them to develop an interest in legal technology is honestly quite difficult. For them, they'll be, okay, I really hate reading prose, and yet you want me to process cases and statutes, like legal English. That's a big no-no. And to them, it's like, what am I reading? Why are we producing these things? To them, the pain of organizing legal research may not resonate that quickly. So that is one of the challenges in our initial days. The second biggest challenge is the idea of a product market fit on developing products, because I think 2021 today is a very different time from where we started, or from even 10 years ago. I think there are lots of materials online to guide entrepreneurs about iteration, about user design, how a user work in a tech company. So let me try and juxtapose a technology company from a non-technology company, a traditional business. That is the difference of what we call a product market fit. So let's say, for example, if you sell orange juice today, there's no doubt that there will be people buying it to price it correctly. There's an existing market and your product as orange juice fits. There's no testing about it. So you generate revenue from day one and you grow your business from there. So that goes the same for selling food, selling books. There's a ready product market fit. Or you trade. You buy goods from Asia, you resell it in Europe, whatever, like box, whatever. But when it comes to a tech company, it is basically a hypothesis. So let's take the example of Facebook 15 years ago. The hypothesis was Zuckerberg thought that college students will be interested to see each other on a social network with their real photographs. Because this hypothesis is a new one, because back in the early 2000s, there was Friendster, there was MySpace. Nobody used their real name and nobody used their real photos. That was a hypothesis. And he went ahead to test the hypothesis to see, okay, guys, are you going to upload your own photos? If you're not, I'm going to hack your dormitory Facebook and I will download all the photos for people to see. That was a hypothesis that he needed to test. In nearer days of like Uber, Airbnb, there was a hypothesis. Airbnb's hypothesis was there's excess capacity in real estate, in people's homes. Therefore, if I can aggregate it on a platform for people to rent on a short-term basis, that creates value for the person visiting the city. That also creates value by generating extra income for the asset owner. That in itself is a hypothesis. It doesn't guarantee fit during day one, because there'll be questions like, okay, why would people open their homes to you? What if there's danger? There's many of these questions. So a technology company starts with a hypothesis, and that hypothesis requires money to build, because the amount of revenue generated in day one will not be sufficient to keep the company alive. A more extreme example will be the invention of a light bulb. So when Edison wanted to invent a light bulb, users will tell him, why will I need a light bulb? I can use a matchstick, I can use a kerosene lamp. It's much cheaper, and it's not in my practice to open a shop at night. After 5, when the sun sets, close shop. Why do we need a light bulb? So Edison was trying to test a hypothesis. People will want to have entertainment, people will want to work, people will want to chat at night with lights. And the government will be willing to provide public lighting. Therefore, electricity comes into play, lobbying the government comes into play. And you can imagine the upfront cost of developing the light bulb till its commercialization is significant. And Edison will not be able to make money at all in the first 10 years of developing the light bulb. So he's backed by this group of people called venture capitalists, but 100 years ago, they were not called that. So JP Morgan backed Edison to push for the light bulb. And of course, it reached product market fit only a few decades later, when people say, okay, governments should build pipelines, wiring to put in place public lighting. It's supposed to be a public good. And then it became, that's where product market fit came into the picture. But for the longest time, the product is not a good one. People will be, I can use a matchstick, I can have a bonfire, I can have a kerosene lamp. Why do I want to even pay for utilities? And why do I want to pay for light bulb? So I think this is the biggest challenge in running a startup for an entrepreneur. Because as people understand business, without being an engineer, people will always be thinking, okay, as long as I keep my revenue above my costs, I'm able to do a business. That is true, but that is for a traditional business, whereby there's no hypothesis to crack a product market fit problem. So I think these two problems, specifically Legaltech, the first part, engineers do not want to join you because of chicken and egg. Number 2, figuring out the product market fit problem is the second biggest challenge.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting, right? Let's zoom in on the product market fit challenge, because I think today when it comes to like investors, you go to any investor, they want to know what the first question they will often ask is, what is your addressable market, right? And also, what is your obtainable market, right? And I think, like, from my personal experience, I think with a lot of other entrepreneurs, the same question exists, which is that a lot of investors, they are sort of, especially legal investors who are looking at, on enterprise software, they're somewhat hesitant to move into the legal tech industry because of how conservative that they are, right? So, there's a common perception, might be true, might be false, that lawyers or in general, or big law firms in general, are very conservative, they're hesitant to move into developing new products, try new products. How do you sort of explain, or sort of through your experience, have you managed to debunk this stereotype that there's no obtainable market because of how the legal industry is?
I have to be candid about it. I don't think I'm in a position to say I debunk some of these beliefs. But I think the crux actually lies in the investors' belief in this particular situation. The situation is as such. It is what it is. But does the investor believe that this is going to change moving forward? Or they think this will continue to be so for a foreseeable future? I think that is the crux. So a lot of investors, they do a lot of their own research, they come with their own positions. It's not easy to convince them otherwise. So that's why people say they raise money from like-minded people who believe. So using the light bulb example again, there can be 5 million arguments why the light bulb will fail. Number one, Edison has to win Tesla. Number two, the New York government has to say okay to electricity. There's so many things that needs to be done. But is there a belief to say that, okay, humans need lighting at night? If the answer is yes, I'm going to back you, Edison. If the answer is no, because for the past 4,000 years, humans do not have light anyway, and we're going to live like that anyway. So what is the belief here? I think that's the most important question.
Right, and for you personally, do you believe that the legal industry will change? And
definitely,
why or how do you think it will change? In
definitely,
the next
because
years?
A few indicators. Because of cloud and because of the digitization of documents, and now with COVID, legal documents actually increase in quantity and complexity at a exponential rate. So if you dial back in the 1980s or 1970s, people typically access the same materials. If you go to the library, it will be that few cases because there's no legal database. If you go to the statute, there's only one statute. So documents are easily accessible. But with a more globalized world now, the way courts are functioning, the way deals are being done, there's a lot more contracts coming up. There's a lot more legal opinions coming up. Then the question now becomes, okay, we used to only have 10 things that we need to refer to. Now I have 1 million. What do we do? Do we say, I'm the industrious associate, I'm going to read everything? That couldn't be the case. Not humanly possible anymore. So moving forward, the idea of being able to locate that document, locate that knowledge to reduce your professional services costs as a business for a law firm becomes very important. I like to use the example. Of the internet in the late 90s, because when the internet was invented in the early 90s and it became popular in the mid 90s, the amount of information and knowledge, documents online is significant, but it's still manageable. So people like Alta Vista, like Yahoo, they can attempt to create a directory from whatever that exists there. But think about it, post 2007, with the cloud, the explosion of materials available online, do you think we can still build a directory to try and organize everything on the internet? It's no longer possible. Therefore, you need Google. Therefore, Google still dominates. And I think in the professional domain, it is the same situation. Although it happened much later as compared to the consumer world, but the amount of legal documents, amount of legal data has exploded from the days of the early 2010s till today. So the industry is trying to react to that. Yes. So short answer to your question, yes, do I think they will change? I think they will change.
That's very interesting. Okay, of course, that's why you're in the business, right? Okay, so perhaps going back to the first question, right, which is the point about tech and how you as am I correct to say that perhaps especially when you did a university, you didn't come from a tech background?
Yes, I did come from a tech background.
Yep. So perhaps of course, there's the issue of bringing in engineers and bring like-minded people, engineers who can really like front the tech side of the business and do up the front back end of the capabilities of the service per se. But in terms of really building a startup, building a legal tech where the value proposition is the tech, right? How did you as someone with a law background and not a tech background really approach this issue? How do you engage with the tech?
So my co-founder, JX, she's in charge of product. So she actually ran startups when she was in the States because she returned to Singapore. So I learned a lot from her experience running SaaS companies when she was in the States. The idea of product, user testing, user research. We derive a lot of learnings from her experience there. And I as the law person, played the role of a domain expert. So that's how we interacted.
Right.
Just like and you will hear a different story when you go to the School of Computing or the Faculty of Computer Science. There will be engineers saying, okay, we know how to build stuff, but what should we build? We need domain experts. I do not know the workflow of a lawyer. I do not know the workflow of a restaurant. What will be useful? So that is why co-founders are important. Understanding different each other's skill sets are important.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's really useful. And I think that really nicely leads us into our next and perhaps final question before we move into Q&A, which is really what advice you have for students, right? Because in this session, I think, or at least at Oxford, students are interested in legal tech are generally two kinds, right? There are students who perhaps wish to enter the legal tech world, build their own legal tech startup, join a legal tech company, or you have your students who are looking to join a big law firm. And you see a lot of big law firms embracing legal tech. And in Singapore, you have Raja, who and in the UK, you have firms like Allen Overy, Clifford Chance, who are really, really trying to like sort of penetrate the legal tech market, right? So the main issue that students face is, okay, I want to be interested in this, right? I want to know and learn more about this legal tech. I want to keep current because legal tech is going to change the world. Legal tech is going to displace whatever, some kind of legal, some parts of legal service, right? So for you, law students, what advice would you give to law students in terms of how to approach legal tech?
Let me try to answer that from 2 points and 1 story. Actually, Intellect, we do have an office in London, in the UK. So we started exploring the UK market in late 2018. We were the only company that was selected for the Thomson Reuters Labs program in early 2019. And we've been working with, that's why we got the opportunity to work with Clifford Chance in the recent POC that Ken has shared. We were actually liaising directly with the main office in London for the Clifford Chance project. So the scene in the UK, the legal tech scene in the UK is really exciting. You can see that law firms are really trying different strategies to leverage on legal tech. And having an understanding of legal tech seems to be a basic requirement for recruitment, because technology has become a main strategy for firms in the UK. So you see that some firms will want to build their own stuff. Some firms will start their own labs, or they start their own incubation program to work with companies to value add their existing technology stack. There are some firms that have their internal teams working on products and they are spun off as legal tech companies thereafter. Or there are some companies that co-invest with other law firms into platforms to host legal tech technologies. So you see, I'm able to mouth out 4 different strategies for law firms already, and they're all in London. And that's only the law firms. We haven't spoken about the in-house teams. We haven't spoken about the banks, the funds, the regulatory guys. Those are also considered legal tech. So I think this trend is important. I think the first advice would be really understand what's out there in that very exciting space. Because I think commercial awareness is something that firms look out for, and it's important to at least have awareness of what's going on in the space when it comes to a particular interview or networking. Because I think that will feature quite significantly in the interview process. So that's one. The second piece of advice, I think, for students interested in starting up in legal tech is really to network and build up friends. Build up relationship with friends from different faculties, especially the engineering faculty. That's where product development mindsets come into play, because how engineers think and how lawyers think can be quite different. And companies that start up in the earlier days typically face a chasm that they need to cross to bridge the technical people and the non-technical people. And I think it will be valuable for people to start this process when they're in school. It's easier that way. Because typically, let me give an example, a conversation between a lawyer and an engineer. When engineer says, can I put this button, what do you want to see on the interface? On the front end interface, the lawyer will ask, what do you mean by front end interface? Is it the front end or the front end for internal use? Can you be more specific? Then it'll be like, okay, engineer says, the front end for internal use. In this case, it's called the back end. It's not called the front end, says the lawyer. And the engineer will go, no, a back end refers to our back end code. A front end is just what you see on the screen. So you have such conversations every day, and the lawyer gets frustrated, and the engineer gets frustrated. That happens like every day. So that is why you see that in some law firms, they actually need product managers. They need the associates to be product managers to understand the use case and then to deliver it to the engineer. That is a skill in itself. So I said I'll share two advice and one story. So the story is we have a teammate in Intellects. He was educated in the UK, a law student. He wanted to practice in the UK. He wanted to stay in the UK to practice. However, he didn't get a training contract back then when he graduated. So when he came back to Singapore about 3 years ago, he was thinking what he could have done to make himself more competitive for his dreams to qualify in the UK. He reached out to Intellects. We took him in as an intern back then. This is also part of our culture, taking interns and helping them realize their legal careers. And subsequently, he joined us full-time. This year is his third year with Intellects. And Intellects has always supported his dream of qualifying in the UK. So we knew from day one he's going to leave if he gets offered. So he tried a few rounds. He tried in 2019. He tried in 2020. So the good news is Clifford Chance actually introduced a track for associates who are savvy with legal technology. I think they call it the Ignite track or something like that.
Yeah, Ignite training contract, yeah.
Yes. And my colleague actually got accepted by Clifford Chance in 2020 under the Ignite track. And I think they only accepted 2 guys or 3 guys globally under the Ignite track, but I'm not sure of the statistic. And part of the reason is his 2.5 years of experience when he was interviewing them with Intellects. So he knew how to talk to a user. He knew what is a product proposition. He knew cybersecurity requirements. He's basically a PM who's trained in the law. And I think if we were to project forward in the legal industry, there may be 2 kinds of lawyers. The first kind of lawyer is the artist. They're a craftsman. They think whatever they draft is unique it's going to be bespoke, and it's going to be the one and only kind in the world. That's the first kind of lawyer. And then the second kind of lawyer that is that behaves like an engineer. They think that a contract is essentially a car. Every clause, every submission, every paragraph has a particular use. There's nothing inherently special for that particular paragraph because somebody has invented it already. A car and another car is just a car. But what is important is for the lawyer to know where to get different parts to form a car. These are two different mindsets. The former may not be scalable, but may be extremely high value. The latter can be scalable, but per transaction amount may not be high. So we need to get lawyers to start thinking that way. But what is important as an underlying theme is to understand how the product development cycle works. Project management. Drafting a contract is project management. Answering the queries of a client is project management. Understanding the user needs from a client is in itself project management. And I think that's important. So I'm very proud of my colleague. I'm very happy that Intellect's played a little role in helping him realize his dreams. And I hope that can also be a story that can inspire the listeners in the audience today. Yep.
Yeah, well, definitely. Yeah, I think a lot of Ignite training contract, at least here at Oxford, has become quite a big thing, right? In fact, every year Clifford Chance comes down to our Oxford Law Fair and they sell it very aggressively. So I think, yeah, and I think Clifford Chance is not the only one that's doing it. I think Siemens & Siemens has started as sort of a fintech/tech-based training contract. You know, you have Ellen and Overy who are moving, who have the whole Fuse incubator thing as well. So yeah, honestly, a lot of exciting new legal tech opportunities, whether you want to become a legal tech startup or whether you want to be a lawyer, right?
I think that reflects the attitude of law firms because they think there's a bunch of lawyers that ought to think like engineers so that they can scale the business as a service provider. And of course, it's not difficult. It's not easy to create a generation of product managers, so they have to start training them. And I think such programs is the start, and it's a signal to the change in the industry.
Yeah, I think that's you're exactly right. I think the greatest testament to the fact that legal industry is changing is perhaps that your biggest players in the market are trying to get lawyers to think more like engineers or product managers, right?
Yeah.